Hello, and welcome to Williams Mullen's Benefits Companion, a podcast that helps employers navigate the complex legal challenges of managing their employee benefit plans. I'm your host, Bryden DeWitt, and today I'll be joined by Ellie Clendenin, a partner in our employee benefits practice group here at Williams Mullen. Ellie, how are you today?
Oh, well, hi, Bryden. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for letting me talk you into joining me on our podcast. Ellie and I work next door to each other here in the Richmond office. Ellie, I thought today I'd really like to talk about the new hardship distribution regulations that were issued recently. And, both of us with our clients, one of the challenges they have is to get employees, especially younger employees or lower income employees, to enroll in the 401k plan. And it's so important with kind of the demise of defined benefit plans that everyone save for retirement, and especially through a 401k. And some of our clients have generous matches that these employees are not taking advantage of. And one of the reasons they don't enroll is they think they may need the money. They don't want to tie the money up into the plan. But one of the ways employees can get that money out and get some comfort is through hardship withdrawals. So we've had these rules in place for a while, the safe harbor rules for hardship distributions. What changes have the regulations made to those rules?
Yes, Brayden, you're right. I think the overall purpose of these changes was to make it easier for people to take hardship distributions. So hardship distributions, as Brayden was talking about, the regulations have been around for a long time. New rules came out that are very similar to the proposed regulations, so there's not much of a change. So it makes it a little bit easier for participants to take a hardship. One big change under these regulations was that they eliminated the 6-month suspension on deferrals. So that was in there as a deterrent. And now plan sponsors have to remove that from their hardship provisions.
And really, that's inconsistent with the idea of wanting employees to defer. If they take money out, then they can't. They were suspended, so that's going away.
Yeah, I never really liked that suspension.
Me neither.
And the point was to deter people from taking hardships, but it didn't seem logical to me, so I agree. So that employers need to take that out. They've also changed the safe harbor events, so they've added more events that you can take a hardship for. So one of the new ones is hardships can be on account of casualties from a federally declared disaster. So before, employers would have to wait for the IRS to issue guidance for each new disaster to be able to allow a hardship for that disaster. And then, of course, the employers were amending their plan each time, and there was uncertainty to employees for whether they could take a hardship distribution after a disaster. So I think this is a very good change for employers and employees. Anything that's been declared a federal disaster. Another one is that actually came along with PPA but was codified in these regulations is a participant can take a hardship for someone who's their primary beneficiary for medical, tuition, and funeral expenses. So it would be their primary beneficiary that's listed on their beneficiary designation forms, but they can now take a hardship for those events. The other interesting thing is the elimination of the requirement that a participant take a loan first. So before, the employer had to require that the participant take a loan first. And, Brydon, we would always say, if the participant's going to take a loan and they need a hardship, they're probably not going to be able to pay their loan back.
Right.
So they have eliminated that requirement, but note that you don't have to eliminate that requirement. You could still require they take a loan first. And then the elimination of the facts and circumstances analysis. So that was the employer had to determine under the facts and circumstances that the employee had need of these funds. They've eliminated that and put in place a general standard that makes it much easier for the employer. It's a 3-prong analysis, and really what it does is it allows the employer to have the employee self-certify that they need the funds. So it's much easier.
The employer can just rely on what the employee tells them, that they meet those prongs.
Yes. So it's much easier. I mean, most employers don't like the facts and circumstances analysis. And what's interesting is the regulations did say that they specifically said that the employee can certify over the telephone. I think because they're finally understanding that a lot of employers rely on the record keepers and people calling in to the record keepers to take distributions. And that was really interesting to me that they did put that in the regulations, that the employee could self-certify over the phone and have it acceptable.
Yeah, so it really is making it a lot easier to qualify for hardships and also then to just actually apply for the hardship distribution.
Yeah, because when you think about it in the distribution context, most employers now have their record keepers taking distribution requests over the phone, but I don't think it's ever been put in a regulation that you can request it by telephone. Right. So I liked that. And they also expanded the distribution sources, so it included safe harbor matching contributions, which it hasn't in the past, and the earnings on those contributions, a QMAC, which probably isn't going to be as big, that source of fund, and the earnings on those, and also earnings on elective deferrals. So it's expanded your ability. Now, a lot of employers, and I kind of agree with this, don't want to give employer contributions for hardships.
Right. I agree with that as well.
Yeah, because they want to keep those for, to be saved for retirement.
Right. I mean, the point here is for employees to get their money out that they're tying up in the plan.
Yeah.
To give them a comfort that they could get that money back.
Yeah. So I don't know if that many employers, but some might want to do it if they have a safe harbor plan.
So when are these changes effective?
Yeah, so the required change, the elimination of the hardship, the elimination of the 6-month suspension is effective. You have to have it effective January 1, 2020. However, if you are an employer right now and you want to eliminate it immediately, you can do that. So you can go back and eliminate that 6-month suspension, starting with new events as early as last year. So if someone took a hardship last year and you're within that period, you could do that. The elimination of the requirement to take a plan loan is effective this year. So you could start with new distributions this year. You could remove that restriction. And the new standard for employee certification is effective January 1, 2020. The new events, you could go back, I don't see how this would be possible, but to January 1, 2018 to apply those new events. So operationally, many can be applied right now.
Are any of these requirements or any of these new changes required? Do employers have to adopt them? And by when would they, if they are required, by when do they have to adopt the amendments?
So they are, the 6-month suspension elimination, as I said, is required. So you have to remove that from your plan, and you have to do that by January 1, 2020. You can implement it earlier. Let's say you decide, well, I'm going to have to do it anyway, or I want to, so we can implement it right now. The new safe harbor events, I believe you could still be a safe harbor without applying those new events, because you don't have to allow a hardship for all of the safe harbor events currently. So that's discretionary to have those new events, to add them. I think most plan sponsors would, because they want to follow the safe harbor hardship rules, and so they would put
and
those
it's going to
in.
be the new market standard.
It's going to be, that's right.
Yeah.
It would be the new standard. And also prototype plans, the plan documents, that's what the plan document would follow. And then the new standard of need would be a requirement to follow those prongs. And that would be, you would put that in January 1, 2020.
So those amendments would need to, just to be clear, would need to be done by the end of this year.
Well, the amendments are a little bit trickier because there's different guidelines based on when they are effective.
All right.
So if the amendment is if you wait till 2020 and you only do the requirements, you're going to have till January 1, 2021, we think the IRS will say.
Okay.
If you put in some of those changes this year, I think you can still have the benefit of waiting, because the IRS is going to publish this in the required amendment list. And that would give you, again, either the effective date of January 2021, or you could go out. We have to wait for more IRS guidance to January 2022, that plan year.
Right.
So employers have some time. I think right now it's determining what you want to do operationally, communicating that to participants, you know,
Yep.
potentially changing SPDs, you know, those kind of things. And if you're doing that, you might want to also just go ahead and do that plan amendment.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ellie, for discussing hardship distribution regulations with us. That'll wrap up our discussion. I'd like to thank, again, Ellie for joining us today on the Benefits Companion. If you have any questions or suggestions for future episodes, you can contact me at bdewitt@williamsmullen.com. You can also visit our employee benefits page at williamsmullen.com/employee benefits. There you can find out more about our team, as well as past episodes of this podcast and legal alerts. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast to be notified of when our next episode posts. Thanks for listening.